Hello, good morning. My name is Laura. I'll try this all over again. I am the Associate Artistic Director of Cincinnati Song Initiative, and I am here this morning to talk about our second main stage concert, which is a part of our World of Song series, and is called Colorful Thoughts. And it focuses on kind of unexplored repertoire of Eastern Europe. So we have representation from German, Polish, and Yiddish languages. And this morning, I am joined by the most amazing team of artists that one could possibly ask for. This morning, we have Kathleen Kelly, Toni Marie Palmertree, and Ellen Rissinger on board with us to talk about this concert and what it was like to make it all come together and what it's like making music during these really wild COVID times. And we're also here just to have a great time. So good morning, everyone. It's so great to have you here. Now that we're unmuted, this is great. So I guess we'll start in screen order. I just want to let the audience know a little bit about who you are and what your connection is with CSI. So Ellen, if you want to start just by introducing yourself and letting us know who you are and your connection with us.
Hi, I am one of the professors now at Carnegie Mellon. I'm the opera coach at Carnegie Mellon University. I also work with the Opera Workshop at Temple University this year. I spent 16 years of my career in Germany. So obviously the German set means a lot to me. And right now I am in Eastern Pennsylvania, staying remote and trying to stay as safe as possible. My connection to CSI is I know Sam from a summer program in Europe many, many years ago, back before he went to Cincinnati, and which was my alma mater. And when he started this program, I was so interested in seeing what was going on, and now I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
Awesome. That's great. Well, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you here. Toni Marie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Well, my name is Toni Marie Palmertree, and I'm currently back in Allentown, Pennsylvania as my home base. I know Ellen and Sam actually in one of my former lives. I managed a children's chorus called the Bel Canto Children's Chorus, and Sam actually played a rehearsal for us, and that's how we originally met. And then when I decided to get back into professional singing, I met Ellen, and Ellen was a huge part in me making the big leap to get into singing professionally. And so all these years later, it comes full circle, which is so fun. And I've really enjoyed working with everybody.
That's awesome. That's great. All right, and last but certainly not least, Kathy.
Hey, I'm Kathleen Kelly. It's great to be here with all of you and thinking about like saying what your career has been. Looking at the three of you, I think of different places that I know you from. Toni Marie from San Francisco, and Ellen from, I think originally from all those years back at Glimmerglass, and Laura recently in Cincinnati. I spent a quarter of a century, I'm the grandma in the group, working for various opera houses before I escaped to the equally interesting arena of academia. I've been in Cincinnati for 2.5 years, and that's how I learned about CSI. Just meeting Laura and Sam, and also getting to know Donna Lowy and Ken Griffiths, who I've known for a long time, but now they're my colleagues, these wonderful like supporters and mentors of the people that created CSI. And I'm super happy to be involved as an artist and just as a cheerleader and supporter. It's such a cool organization doing really great work. So,
well, we are thrilled to have you, Kathy, and you, Toni Marie, and you, Ellen. It's like I was going through, and I know I said this in an email to you guys, but I was charged with editing the concert video, and just it is an incredible piece of work. Like so much artistry and so much beautiful music making and collaboration happening. I'm really, really excited for everybody to see it. And if I do say so myself, I think the editing is pretty good. But anyway, so now that we're here and we're talking about the concert and everything, Ellen and Tony Marie, I wanted to open up the floor to the both of you to talk a little bit about the repertoire you chose and why you chose it, and how it fits in with this idea of sort of underrepresented European languages and regions in Europe that are just not well represented in the classical music canon right now, and just why you chose that repertoire and just a little bit about it.
Am I going to start, or are you going to start, Tony?
Go ahead, Ellen.
When Sam first brought up the idea of lesser known repertoire, the first thing I said was I spent 8 years in Dresden, which is the former East Germany. And there are so many, we did several concerts while I was there of operetta from East German composers. So I really wanted to look into the art song of East German composers. So the German set is all composers from the former East Germany, writing texts from German composers, depending on which song you're talking about. We also have Bertolt Brecht texts, but some of them were people that were very much against the fascism of the time. So it was fascinating to get into that and start looking at the songs to see that they used some of the poets that we do know, like Christian Morgenstern, but also different poets that we would never have heard of otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I actually, as I was listening to the songs that you and Tony Marie did you notice that there were any idiosyncrasies or anything that was kind of different in terms of its compositional style, or anything like that would distinguish it from the Western German canon that we know and love?
Honestly, I didn't notice anything specific in that sense. What I did notice was that it was a little bit later. The things that were the musical devices that we would use in, say, 1950 were being used in the 60s and 70s there, I think, because they were shut off from the Western world.
Sure.
At a certain point in time.
That's really interesting. That's great. Tony Marie, do you want to go ahead and talk about the Yiddish songs?
Yes. So this is definitely a venue that I have never explored before, which was so fun to not only explore a new language, but a new style of music, which also sort of required a different approach to the singing. You know, I don't want to sing it the same way or perform it the same way that I would sing in opera or even art song necessarily. So basically I got this gigantic compilation of Yiddish song, and I think there's probably hundreds of songs, and I sat and listened, either if they were already recorded online in some form, or played them on the piano, every single one, hundreds of them, because I had never heard any of them, and I wanted to make sure that I chose ones that fit for my voice, but also like really spoke to the audience, and ones that I could do respectfully and really dig my heels in to learning. And there were a few that I would have loved to have done, but just frankly, they just didn't fit my voice. I couldn't perform them in a way that would really showcase how great of a piece of music it was. So these pieces are curated for what I felt we could really represent in a great way. I really loved digging into the Yiddish language. It's like a compilation of a lot of different sounds, and it really challenged me to also work side by side on German at the same time. But it was a lot of fun, and I also was fortunate to have a great coach, a teacher in San Francisco, who held my hand through all of the Yiddish learning. So really
we would be nothing without our coaches.
Yeah, amen.
Amazing. Well, and it was really a treat for me going through and listening to the German and the Yiddish side by side, because there's actually kind of, I was not expecting this, but a lot of crossover in the languages. And I like, there's a Schlaf ein mein Kind. I was like, is this, as I was trying to put it together, I was like, is this one of the German ones or one of the Yiddish ones?
Exactly.
But it was really neat to see that.
Yeah, when we were working on them, we were talking about the translation, and some of them I couldn't guess it, but I looked at her when we got to Schlaf Ein. I'm like, I can translate this. This literally looks just like German.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
it was really cool.
it felt the most like an actual art song.
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But yeah, I just thought that was a really neat thing as I was going through, and it was a moment for me of like, wait, which one is it? And I think that'll be really neat for our audiences to experience too, is that this underrepresented repertoire really isn't that far away from what we're already familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Kathy, let's talk about Polish for a sec. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I can.
I think we're all just too from Zoom, we all have a habit of just hitting the mute button whenever we're not talking. But Kathy, I know I have a few things to say about the Polish, but since this was your first experience working on this particular repertoire, just tell us a little bit about what that experience was for you, both like working with the language and with Szymanowski and everything. Just tell us your thoughts.
What strikes me the most about the songs that you chose is how direct and sort of true they are. I love they're all written from the point of view of a child, a young girl, and I just find them so simple, but not easy. I'm struggling for language to say this, but they're very honest. They're very direct. I think the title "Children's Rhymes" could give the impression that the songs are easy or sort of not very emotionally complex. I actually find them to be incredibly complex, but just direct and honest in that way that kids are. Just
yeah.
And also how some of the poetry is. It gives you a sense of a child's world from a child's perspective.
Yeah.
Recently, I was with my sister. I had a chance to hook up with her about 6 weeks ago, and we went just for like a sister's weekend at an Airbnb in Iowa, and it was on a farm, and it was really something to be there with an adult woman, like we're a bunch of 50-year-old women. But when we were little, we went to this distant relative's farm every summer, and we had this like memory of being small together. There was something about being like around with the cornfields and the silos. It's very hard to describe, but that's what that set gives me an impression of too, that sort of like child-sized view of the bigger world.
Yeah.
And as far as like the technical demands of Polish, I would like to thank you for knowing it better than I do, and it's so beautiful. Like I can't wait to dig into the language more and just know more of the repertoire there. And Ellen, to your point about all of the repertoire that was created behind the Iron Curtain, so to say, during the time that you and I were like growing up and being educated in, classical music. There's so much stuff that we missed out on because of the fact that our training happened before Glasnost and the Wende and everything. So there's, and then extrapolate that out into the world, which is what the rest of CSI's season is about. And the good news is that we'll never get to the end of learning all the repertoire, right?
Yeah.
Like it can't be boring. There's so much.
Well, and I went to an online class from, I think, Longi School of Music, did a class on the music of the African diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they talked about was we need to stop saying Western music and world music, and we need to just start saying music.
Yeah.
Already by saying world music, it puts it in a classification that makes us think, oh, it's other, but it isn't.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I took a class on that. When was I last in school? I don't remember.
Time has no meaning.
This past year. It may have been 2 years ago. I truly don't know. Time has no meaning. But, it was talking a lot about this idea of world music and how it's really not an accurate term.
Mm-hmm.
and that we use music as a way in all parts of the world to express our stories. Right. And that's something that's been really gratifying for me working on this project, especially, is that like there are so many, and like you said, Kathy, like there's no end to the stories. We will never reach the end. And it's just, there are so many stories to be told, and in such beautiful ways, such beautiful music. And it's been really, really fun working on this. But I wanted to throw in there a little bit about the Polish rep that Kathy and I worked on. So I could talk about this for an hour because I have a paper that was supposed to be an hour for my lecture recital on this music that we were doing. But basically, this Szymanowski has been sitting with me for a long time. I was first introduced to his music by Margot Garrett during my undergrad, which feels like it was ages ago. And it's getting to that point, it almost was ages ago. But she introduced me to his music, and I sang his Songs of the Infatuated Muezzin, which like are so sophisticated and very wrought with kind of the Orientalism of the time, that they were written very much in the vein of someone like Ravel. And it's funny because he has this beautiful, incredibly singable, satisfying, complex music, and no one knows about it. No one knows about it. And it's mind-blowing because here's this guy who, in all likelihood, I may be related to, because Poland is a small country. Who knows? But he had this incredible vision for his music and such a deep connection, at least with the music that I was writing. He was developing such a deep connection with like the historical roots of the country. And one of the things that's really interesting is this, these pieces that we did really bridged a gap between him kind of exploring this idea of otherness, Orientalism, and really kind of bringing things back home and drawing on the music of Poland and folk music. And what I think is so great is that he brings it literally home to this little girl and gives you this very complex worldview from like the perspective of a child. And like Kathy said, it's surprisingly complex, even though you look at its children's rhymes, you're like, oh, this is like Dr. Seuss or something. But even when you read Dr. Seuss or watch a Pixar film and you're like, this is for kids, there's something for adults in there too. And I think we sometimes underestimate the ability of children to understand the complications of the world. And it's just been really gratifying to work on these projects and get to know particularly Szymanowski's music, and really dive into what makes his music so special. And I had a great collaborative partner in that, and who really, like, I don't know, something, Kathy, and I know we've talked about this, but something I really appreciated about our work together is, I think you said, when you first started working on it, you were like, I could see how your average sort of master student collaborative pianist would look at this and be like, this isn't that hard.
Right.
But when you take a second to actually work on it, work through the text with the music and find sort of those complexities and those subtleties, it's a masterpiece in and of itself. And the thing that I'm just so grateful for to you, Kathy, is that you found those subtleties and you found those complexities and you just brought them to life in a way that I like better than I could have even dreamed of.
See, I felt like I was taking all of those cues from you. So there you go. That's one thing that you make me think as you talk about all of this is that I do think that sometimes poets put into the mouths of children thoughts that adults have started to become reluctant to express, especially when it comes to the sort of active, we call it fantasy life of a child, but the way there are so many poems in the set about animals.
Yep.
They're not about animals. They're not descriptions of animals. They're this little girl like talking to the cat or the horse in the barn or something like that, or talking to her toys. And adults learn to modify and sort of censor the way that they speak about the sort of life of the mind, their own fantasy life and their own relationships with like pets. I mean, you know, I'm looking directly at you, Ellen, and this is, but
It's so real.
we kind of learn when we grow up, right? That there are different boundaries in which it's acceptable to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think of Mussorgsky, The Nursery, these pieces by Szymanowski, and other poems that I can think of where if you put a child as the speaker of those words, they're acceptable in a way that they wouldn't be from a grown-up.
Yeah.
And the simplicity of the music is there too, right? I mean, Ellen, I'm sure that you'll resonate with this. When you look at it on the page, I know that during my master's collaborative work, I would not have programmed those songs because I would not have considered them to be like macho piano enough. It's like, sorry, there aren't enough notes. I need to play more notes so that I look super fancy. But that, you know, all of that is kind of a pose. I mean, you know, you can say complicated stuff through complicated music too, but I don't know. Mostly, I just loved them. I thought they were gorgeous. I didn't know them before. I'm so happy to know them now.
No, and quite honestly, sometimes simplicity is the hardest thing to play.
Right?
You have to get out of your own way and just say, this is exactly what it is without me putting too much of myself into it. And I just have to like get out of the way and do what the composer asked me to do. That's hard.
Singers like Tony Marie, I'm sure you've experienced this too, especially in some of the rep that you sang, is like as a singer. And Kathy, you know, I was like, we had to do the last song. We had to record it like 4 times because I was just thinking too much. I was getting too much in my own way. And it's so hard as a singer because you want to like put so much into it, right? But at the end of the day, if you really want like the simplicity and what's actually on the page to shine through, you just have to be like, I am a conduit of the music. I am out of the way. And Tony Marie, I know that you get that.
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That's okay. No, it's exactly how you describe it, Laura. It's like you have to put your own like thoughts and ego and everything aside and just, you know, do it as simply as possible because the melody and the words will shine through, especially when it's that simple. And if you add too much glitter, you'll be blinded by it. So yeah, it's an interesting process, but it's also really beneficial as a singer to take a step back and go, I'm too much right now.
I have to do that more often than I care to admit.
I kind of want to ask a question.
Yes.
Just of this group. Does anybody else, or is it just me, find it really challenging to do exactly what Laura and Tony Marie are talking about in this time when we're doing it all, you know, on recordings? I mean, I personally find it easier to get that sort of like just stay in the energy of the piece and do the thing and don't overthink it when I've got the other people around me, right? That's we sort of, I think we kind of learn as live performers to use that energy from other people. And it's really hard when you're just doing it like at your iPhone. Yeah. We had much fancier equipment than that. Anyone listening, we did not record this concert on iPhone. But you know what I mean? It's, what do you all think about that?
Oh, absolutely. There definitely is an energy from the audience that, you know, we need and still need. And in fact, like I tried to keep them in mind as much as possible so that I didn't get too into my own thoughts. But I mean, the audience is so important. I would say maybe it's like 50% of, you know, what we need as performers. We feel your energy, we need your energy, and it makes our performance what it is. We just rise to the occasion. We have to. Mm-hmm. And when we record, we have this opportunity to redo things. And that is so treacherous.
Yes.
So treacherous. It's not a benefit sometimes.
Well, I don't know if anybody else reacts this way, but I've realized over the years that I perform so much better when I'm under that kind of pressure, when people are there and I have to do it, and you're in an audience, there's an audience of 1,500 people, and suddenly you have to play well, and even things that would never go right in rehearsals will go right, because somehow my adrenaline kicks in and the energy from the audience makes me play better than I actually am. Yeah. And it's hard to do that for a camera.
It also helps you keep going, right? Like if something doesn't go the way that you want, it's easier to keep your mind going forward because you've got all these other humans kind of helping you do that.
Yeah.
So I love what you said about imagining people being there, Tony Marie. That's very powerful, right? Back to children's fantasy life, right? Like we can use some of that energy.
Definitely. It's, in live performance, it's always so successful when you feel like the performer is speaking to you alone. And so in a way, you can change your thoughts with the camera and think, I'm speaking directly to someone right now. It's a little hard to wrap your mind around it at first, but once you get into that groove, you can simulate a little bit of what it feels like to speak directly to your audience. Still not the same, but hopefully it comes across. I know it will come across through this performance, because that's what our goal is, right? To speak to our audiences.
Yeah. Absolutely. I find that for me, and I don't know if Tony Marie, if you can attest to this or not, I find that when I don't have people around, I sing better. Only because I have a chance to sort of like, I don't feel that pressure of like, oh no, I'm nervous. Maybe my vibrato will be too fast or something. Or I can breathe properly because I'm not like, but the other side of that is like, and I totally agree with all of you, is that you get so much from the people who watch you, from the people who are invested in that story with you. Like, I just think back on all the recitals that I've done, and it's like, when you have those moments of silence where you can tell that no one in the audience is breathing, and like just like take that moment to be like, okay, and now I'm about to like launch into the next part of this story because I know you're waiting or whatever. It's just like you get the pacing, you get so much from their input, even if it's just silent and complicit and just sitting there and watching, you get so much. And like, that's the one thing I think that all of us can agree on that we really miss.
Mm. Yep.
Yeah, it's been a wild time. But I can say definitively it did not affect any performance in this concert. So it's going to be very touching and heartfelt.
I think it's good news that performance in the digital space is different than live performance. Like I sort of love actually that in this conversation about something that we created for digital release, we've all ended up talking about how great live performance is, and that's true. Like there isn't a substitute for it.
Yeah.
And that's good news. Like what we do here isn't going to replace it, but I feel pretty psyched about across the industry people getting really good at doing both things.
Yeah. And I think as we continue to get better, especially in the digital realm, I think, and this is something Sam and I have talked a lot about, is like, what can we create that exists only in the digital realm versus what we experienced live in a concert hall or in a recital room or in someone's living room or whatever. Because, I really do think that there was a big push at the beginning to find something that would replace the concert experience. The live concert experience. And what we're finding now is that in this conversation, like that's really not possible, because we as performers get so much from our audience, and the audience gets so much from having that connection with us as performers. And so now we're in that limbo of like, okay, we're starting to get good at this technology thing. How can we start creating things that only exist in this digital realm and not just as a substitute or a replacement for what we do live?
Absolutely. That's so well said. I really like the opportunity that, the audience really gets a front row seat.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to see all kinds of expressions. What did you say?
I said they're going to be able to see my pimples.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. That we have new fears now because of the digital age. We have to be worried about other things, you know. My skincare routine has to be even better because they'll be able to see everything. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, and being able to watch, you know, the pianist's fingers and, you know, how just from a different angle that they would never get in live performance is, you know, it's a blessing in a different way, so it'll be just as equally entertaining.
Well, and I'm one of those weird people. When I see a concert, I want to take notes. I want to remember things. I want to write things down. So it's kind of nice sometimes to have things that I can watch digitally, so that either I can go back and write it down, or I can, you know, follow along with the music sometimes if I really feel organized enough to get it all together by the right time. I mean, I do enjoy going to see rehearsals for that reason, because I can see the work in progress and I can see the things that are going on sort of in their minds too, which I think this also kind of gives us a chance to do some of that.
Absolutely.
And I want to tell you like a brief conversation that I had with a different friend like 2 days ago. He lives on the Kona coast of Hawaii, and he was talking about a small theater that is near where he lives. So they have like 400 seats, and before they had to shut because of COVID, they did all kinds of different programming, but they did a lot of like native Hawaiian stuff, native Hawaiian dance and music. So they started making a digital archive of all of these different performances. They actually started it before the pandemic. And they've got like this huge number of subscribers for that digital content from all over the world. Because where else can, I mean, I'm sure that it's cooler in a lot of ways to go to Hawaii and be there in person with Hawaiian artists who are doing their traditional thing. But how many of us are going to have a chance to do that in our lives? Relatively few, right? Yeah. So when I think about like how great live performance is, but then you start adding up all the people who aren't necessarily able to partake of that, right? Maybe they don't live near where it's happening, or the ticket price is too much, or the childcare is too much, or there's not time, or maybe they do have resources to pay for that, but they're not familiar with it, so they're not going to stake that much money on a first-time experience, maybe, or maybe it's hard for them to drive at night, or maybe physical access because of some disability to a hall is an issue, or there are so many people who could be engaged with what we do, who are prevented from taking part in live performance for a whole host of reasons. So if we end up having this kind of yes and approach, you know, if we can do what we do in the live space, but also continue to refine these ways to make something really excellent for the digital space, the potential expanse of our like lovers and supporters is really profound, I think. You know, I mean, and now that everybody's here, you know, like creating and collaborating, because really this is the only place where we can do our work. I think great things are going to happen because there are all these creative minds here doing the thing.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Well, I wanted to make a quick turn from this conversation, this very useful and very amazing conversation about the concert experience, and talk a little bit about some of our favorite things, which is like, what were some of, Ellen and Tony Marie, we'll start with y'all. What were some of your favorite songs that you performed on this concert, and why?
I have to say, for me, like, it's a tough question because everything I'm playing at the time is literally my favorite thing. I'm hopeless like that. Ask anybody. And if I'm talking about diction, this is my favorite diction rule. But no, this is actually my favorite diction rule. And I'm kind of weird like that. But I'm also ridiculously sentimental. So I really like songs that make me feel every emotion on the face of the earth. And the ballade, the Marie Sanders ballade by Henry Berthold. It's a Bertolt Brecht text. Bertolt Brecht, the famous playwright that worked with Kurt Weill. And it really hurts your soul. The whole text, it's a text about a woman who's in love with a Jewish man in fascist Germany and what happens to her. And really, like, by the end of it, Tony and Marie and I, by the end, were literally empty at the end of performing that. But the other one that gets to me too is Wir lieben das Leben, the last one in the German set. It's by another poet who wrote during fascist times, and he was repressed during the fascist times. And he says, we love life and we love everyone, even the people that are like sheep that follow along, but we don't love the people that stop other people from living. And if we see, this is where the sentimentality comes in. And if we can't, if the fight for their freedom does not leave us time to be happy, then we're going to just prepare the way for others. And it's, I mean, look at me. This is how I ended up that set every time. I just with so many emotions bubbling over, and that's the kind of music I want to make.
Yeah, I think especially that's what we need is, things that both are important to us as people, but also relevant to what we're dealing with, both as individuals and as a collective humanity.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, Tony Marie, go ahead.
Well, I have to agree with everything Ellen said. That last chord in the Marizandas is just like, I don't know, wait to experience it, basically. I just get goosebumps thinking about it. It's just one of those pieces where I feel like all of time and space just stops. And it's almost hard to come out of it. So it really is a piece that just demands your focus. The melody is quite simple, but the words are very profound. So that was an interesting thing to go through. My favorite piece in the Yiddish set was Dremlin Fegel. And the melody is so beautiful and soothing and sweet and has all of the elements of a lullaby, a lululu, and you could repeat it in your head as, you walk around your house,
I have.
I'm so glad that you are suffering with that too, because it's running through my head. But the words in the piece, it takes you on a little journey, because it starts out, just describing a scene of a child being sung to in their cradle. And in the second verse, you realize that there's a stranger singing the lullaby to the child because their mother is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So when the verse comes back again, describing the stranger singing this lullaby, it's heartbreaking. And again, I feel like all of time and space stops. It makes me be in that moment, and I'm only thinking of that little child and what their future might have been. And, that story, did that stranger who was singing to them make it? What was that life like? So it's a really powerful song. A lot of the songs are very powerful in their words, but that particular one just really got me, especially as a mom. It just like really got me. So
yeah, excellent choices. I probably would have said the same, just based on listening. Those were a few of my favorites too. So, Kathy.
Well, first, I want to say that I can't wait to hear Tony Marie and Ellen. I can't wait to hear it tomorrow. If I had to pick my favorite of the Szymanowski, I would pick the one, the one which I believe is called "The Princess Gets Married."
Yeah,
either Prisha, the young girl, is playing out this scene with dolls of hers, or I like to think that it's a child's eye view of some older person in the family getting married. Like maybe she's a flower girl or something like that. And the song goes from this sort of like really active bustle of like, and text of we're getting ready and there are all the things and the princess is getting dressed and the people are coming. And then out of nowhere, it just sort of like that feeling of like taking wings and catching the air, like all of that activity goes away and it just like enters this other world of like, of the ceremony itself. And this child is describing like the saints and the angels and this sort of magical moment of the wedding itself. And I always had this picture in my mind, Laura, of, like the little girl in the fancy dress and like all of the relatives running around. And then the moment that you walk into the church and you realize that you're in the middle of this big moment. I have pictures in my head of my own, nieces at very tiny ages, like ceremoniously walking down that center aisle, like, like throwing the rose petals and being like understand, like that first moment inside a ceremony where you're just little and you're like, oh God, this is a big thing with meaning, and I'm trying to put words on it. I love that song and how he puts that together in like 3 minutes.
Yeah. And it's I think it's the longest out of all the ones that we did. And rightly so, because it's its own sort of epic with lots of different facets of storytelling.
Yeah.
I do love that one. That's a great one. I would say my personal favorites are either number 9, which is Spring. Which is this beautiful like exhortation of like just being in nature. There are birds, there's wind, there's peonies, and like it's not just describing nature, but it's describing, I imagine this little girl is like standing like in her backyard and just looking at like this beautiful like field of flowers, and like the wind is blowing and like there are these birds singing everywhere, and it's just like it's so joyful and so it reminds and Kathy, I think I mentioned this too when we were working on it, but it reminds me a lot of Debussy's Green.
Yeah.
Because it's just got that sort of that whoosh of joy and just like so many beautiful like moments in the piano that are so descriptive of like the imagery and everything. So it's either that one or the very last one that we had to record 4 times because I was so like, I had this vision in my brain of like, it's one of the 4 or 5 lullabies that's in the entire cycle. And it's Kshisha going out to the barn to feed her horse, and it's this beautiful tender moment of like she recognizes that this horse works really hard every day and like must be really tired, but she's like, hey, guess what, I have cabbage leaves for you, and I have apples for you, and I have sugar cubes for you, and they're gonna make you feel better, and then you're gonna sleep and you're gonna be ready to work all over again in the morning. And like it's kind of like, we have as adults these very almost like human like relationships with our pets, right? Like we feel that we're able to communicate with them in our own way.
Almost. I don't think I need almost in that sentence.
And like the thing is I think out of all the animals that Kshisha like talks about in this cycle, is that horse is her favorite. Like I can tell, and she just like she's on level with that horse, and it's so tender, and it's the last song, not of the cycle, but of the set that Kathy and I performed. And so it's between like this beautiful exhortation of nature or like this very beautiful sort of bittersweet and tender relationship between this little girl and her horse. And so I can't decide which one I like better, but they're really special to me. So I'm really excited for everybody. I realize we're talking about this concert so much, and I'm just so excited for everybody to see it because it's going to be so great. So Ellen and Tony Marie, I know we talked about this kind of briefly, but what was kind of your experience going through and making this concert, both as a digital thing in and of itself, but also like in the middle of COVID? What did it change for you, your normal sort of preparation process, and how I think everybody has sort of figured out their own way to adapt to making music during COVID. And so what did that look like for you, and what kind of changed? What were some challenges or maybe unexpected sort of things that were easier for you? Just talk to us about that experience.
Do you want to talk about the mirrors, or should I?
Go for it.
This is not about the process. This is about the end result. We chose to record this in a music school in Allentown is in Allentown, right? Yeah. And what we didn't realize is that there are mirrors behind the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And we're musicians, we're not technicians. So we show up and we're trying to figure out how to set up all the cameras so that we can't see the cameras in the camera view. And then suddenly we realize that we also have to make sure you can't see anything bad in the mirrors too.
Oh, geez.
And then once we finally got that all set up on photo, we switched it to video, and the video format changes the size of it. So then everything was thrown off. So that was a whole strange thing that we never even thought about before. And as much as I have always respected the technicians at my concerts, I will respect them like 6 times as much now for things like that.
Seriously.
It drove us crazy. But I have to say, like, for the actual preparation, like picking the music, was, I think, kind of the same process the way I would have gone. Maybe a little less of us getting together to go through them, more about, we chose a bunch of songs and then shared them with each other. So then the other person would pick the ones that they liked the best out of that limited set, rather than sitting together to go through that treasury of Yiddish song, like she had.
Interesting. Yeah, because the reason I brought this up is Kathy and I I was on the Gulf Coast and Kathy, you were in Cincinnati, and we ended up having a very successful virtual rehearsal.
Yeah.
Like a first read through of all the music that we did. And it was wild. It was wild.
I think one of the really lucky things, Ellen, I'm sure you feel this way too, about being in an academic situation with a very regular coaching schedule, is that we were forced to, but we also had the opportunity and some institutional support. I mean, that varies from place to place, but certainly we had some, right? We didn't have to do it on our own. We had the opportunity to practice coaching over a virtual connection. And I mean, that started back in March and April, right? When everybody went home and we didn't have any other choice. So the lucky thing about that was having the opportunity to sort of figure out how to do it, right? It's yet another new skill that is very, very related to the skills that you already have, but like adds some other things. So I was happy for that. When I first suggested to Laura that we could do remote rehearsal, she was like, "Really?" But it
was a little skeptical, but it ended up working out really well.
It's a different. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but it worked okay. I mean,
it worked better than okay. It was awesome.
And then when we got together, it was really fascinating to me to find out that even with the weirdness and the sort of different relationship of rehearsing over a time lagged connection, is that when you then do meet for our one rehearsal in person together, we were familiar with each other's physicality and take. Like we did take things away from that virtual rehearsal. So that's, I mean, just like back on the soapbox about how that could transform things. Think about how that could change the entire economic conversation around recitals, right? Because what's hard about making time in your life for recital is making time for rehearsal. Yeah. If that doesn't all have to be in person, that could be a real game changer, I think, for this particular kind of art form that we love so much and want to keep going. So I mean,
the good thing in our case is that we live about an hour from each other, maybe a little bit more than an hour. So we actually had the chance to rehearse together a few times at my church, because the church is not being used. They're staying safe because of COVID. So we would stay far, far away from each other. I kept my mask on. She would sing in another direction, but we did have the chance to sing live. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's such a relief when you're in the same space and you feel the person breathe and your hands down. It's just totally sort of opens back up again.
We have a moment for the churches of America and how they are saving our profession right now.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Truly, like nothing of what we've done over the last 8 months or so, I truly, 90% of it would be gone if we didn't have church availability.
Right, exactly. Well, and not just what they're doing for us, what they're doing for everybody right now with the food band pantries. And I mean, the churches are really keeping the country going.
Absolutely. Shout out to the churches. Tony Marie, what has your experience been kind of in all of this? Was there anything that proved to be extra challenging or maybe a blessing in disguise?
How much time do we have? But
Time.
I mean, I'm gonna be real for a minute. Not that we haven't been before, but like I think I'm gonna say something for myself that probably under normal circumstances I wouldn't. It was challenging to sing. I felt brokenhearted for a long time.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to like make a sound, to work on anything. I mean, really difficult. Like don't want to get out of bed difficult. So, and I know that others are sharing that same experience. And I just feel like it's really important to say that out loud because it is really, really difficult and you're not alone. Singing in a mask is difficult and annoying, but thank God, you know, we can still do it. You know, it's a really good tool to be able to make music. And frankly, it provided me an opportunity to reset. There was a lot of things that I was doing because I was so busy that, you know, I didn't have time to like rework some things that I was doing vocally or, you know, maybe singing a little too heavily or too much. And this time has provided me some time to reset and really work on those things. And a mask really makes you do those things.
Yeah.
So it's been a really worthwhile journey, not easy and definitely emotional along the way. And but I'm at a place that I'm grateful for the opportunity and the challenge of it. And I think, you know, well, I know that I will be better off in the long run, having gone through this time. So I'm grateful for that. But definitely rehearsing in person with a mask is difficult, but still worthwhile. Rehearsing over Zoom is difficult, but still worthwhile. So I just want to encourage everyone else out there to just keep going, keep making music. It's worth it. It's really, really worth it. Even if it's difficult, it's worth it.
I think the first music making I did in the middle of all of this COVID stuff with Kathy, we actually did that little concert for the UC people over Zoom. And I think I cried. Like I legit cried. And I think, what did we do? Did we do Cecilia? And you were like, that is the most joyous, most joyous house I've ever heard.
This was way back in September and it was in my studio. So we opened all the windows and opened my door and I was masked and you sang away from me. Yeah. But when we rehearsed for the first time, you were standing out in the hall.
Yeah.
And I started playing Morgan and you started crying.
Yeah.
And then you got it together and started singing Morgan and I started crying. It was like, but it was also, remember the feeling of just being rattled by somebody else making sound, right?
Yeah.
Like just, I mean, it's such a cliche, right? But all the stuff that was always a part of your daily life that you'll never take for granted again.
Yeah. It was very strange walking through the halls of DVAC and not hearing anybody singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
I can't even imagine. Oh.
Yeah. But, you know, I think everything that, you know, we've talked about in all of this, I think it shows the resilient artist spirit. And that, you know, I think I have seen kind of two sides of this coin where, you know, you have people like us who are like, like Tony Marie said, this is a very like, it's worth it. This is a worthwhile endeavor. And then you have kind of the doom and gloom folks who are like, this may be the demise of our, you know, of our art form. And I just, after talking to so many people, I really like, and maybe it's just the people I happen to surround myself with, but I really don't think that's the case. Mm-hmm. I think we are finding ways and viable pathways to not just like keep the, like by the skin of our teeth, keep it alive, but like we are finding ways to really keep this going in a really robust way. And I'm just like, I'm so inspired by all three of you and the work that you do and just like the positivity and grace and fervor with which you go after, you know, the art making is just, it's really inspirational and so necessary right now. It's so necessary.
I think the thing to remember is opera's been around since 1600. So It's been through pestilence. It's been through plagues. It's been through wars. It's been through everything. And opera is still standing. Art song is still standing. We're still here. It's going to get through.
We're not going away.
You're stuck with us.
I love this. I love this, that in this conversation, there's like positivity, but there's also real honesty about how hard this is. Tony Marie, I appreciate what you said so much, because there's so much grief.
Yeah.
You know, there's grief that everybody is experiencing, from alteration of plans to really personal grief about, you know, loss of important people. And that's part of everybody's life and everybody's experience. And we're kind of charged with helping express that. But one of the ways in which we can hold each other up is to make space for how difficult it is, because that's real. And Laura, what you said about like people feeling positive or people feeling kind of doom and gloom, I bet most people can put themselves on both lists
at some point. Yeah,
sometimes like within the same hour.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think it's so important too. And I've, you know, been really fortunate to be surrounded by people who are willing to speak honestly about, you know, the struggles and the joys of creating music during this time. But I think it's just so important to have conversations like these where, you know, we all kind of worked collectively on a project and had both similar experiences in terms of, you know, some of the technological things, and, you know, and then different experiences in terms of, you know, what we got out of it emotionally, or, you know, whatever. It's so important to have these conversations so that people know that, you know, it's Sam and I joke about this. Everybody's like, wow, CSI, you guys have it so put together. And it's like, little do you know, we had a meeting in our pajamas yesterday, you know, and it's just like, you know, you put on this beautiful, polished product for people, but that there's so much more that goes on in the background. And so that we are very real people. We are all, we are not exempt from the grief and the joys that this time has brought for all of us. And I think it's really beautiful that all of us are able to speak so candidly about it. And I personally appreciate that, just as me, because sometimes it feels like I am going through all of this alone.
Not at all. I know so many people that through March, April, May, June, a lot of us went into a very deep depression.
Yeah.
Watching what was happening and seeing everything shutting down, and knowing that singing is one of the hardest things to be able to come back because of the transmission of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we're all trying to find now the ways to cope with that until we can be live again together.
Yeah. And I think we will be. Like,
absolutely.
I think I have a lot of hope, especially after this conversation. But I had hope before, but especially after this conversation, it's looking up.
What I'm super glad about is that I get to hear all of you tomorrow and me. like we're not deprived of that, right? Like we have to wait for a lot of things that we care about deeply to come back, but we don't have to wait for music making, and we don't need to wait to experience each other's artistry. Exactly. And like I'm so grateful for that. Tony Marie, I still remember the last time I heard you live in Dallas. Like I still have the sound of that in my ear, and I cannot wait to hear you again.
It's stunning, truly stunning.
It's really beautiful.
Well, ladies, before we wrap up, we're hitting the hour here. Any final thoughts about the music making or the concert, or things you want people to know before we watch the concert tomorrow? Any final words before we say our goodbyes?
I'd say if you haven't invited a friend, you need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We need your support, just, you know, for obvious reasons, but also you may not know how much your friend needs that moment too. Yeah. So share so that you can give a gift to someone through music. It's really important.
And I do think that there is a moment for everyone in this concert. Like truly, there is a story for everybody somewhere in this concert.
Yeah, I would say for ours, it runs the gamut of every emotion, And sometimes you need that. We need that catharsis to feel all of these things, to know that it's okay, that we're all in this together, in everything, in the life and everything.
Yep. Any final thoughts, Kathy?
I think people are going to love it.
I do too.
Yeah, invite a friend. I'll second that.
Yeah.
But show up. Start. That's another thing that we can do, is start forming the habit of showing up for the digital content that's being created. It's that organizations are making it super easy to do. You could do it right away. You can do it later, depending on how you subscribe. And I guess I just want to say thanks to Laura and Sam and to CSI for being one of the pioneering organizations, just like getting out there and making it happen.
Yep.
Because that's jumping into the deep end of the pool, and we're really grateful.
Yeah, that was actually something Sam and I talked about a lot, is like the most important thing that we can do during this pandemic is employ people, is give people work, give people an outlet to express and tell those stories and to make music. And I think we're doing that right now. So far so good. But I just want to thank all three of you so much, just from the bottom of my heart, both as like just a human, but also as, an administrator for CSI. Just thank you so much for your amazing artistry, for your hard work, and for just putting your heart and soul out on the table and really bringing something beautiful and singular to the table for this concert. It's really stunning, and just thank you. And thank you for being here today to talk us through your experiences and to have some really, really great conversations, and just for your honesty and your grace and your spirit. We are very, very grateful for you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
All right. Well, y'all have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And everybody, don't forget to tune in tomorrow, Sunday, December 6th at 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central. We will be, our Colorful Thoughts concert will be going live on CSI Digital. And be sure, like Tony Murray said, to invite a friend. We're really excited to show this project to you, and hopefully we'll be able to interact with you either virtually or in person soon.
Hi, I'm Ellen Rissinger. I hope you'll join me tomorrow, December 6th, for Cincinnati Song Initiative's streaming digital concert, Colorful Thoughts, in which we perform lesser-known art songs in Polish, Yiddish, and German. The German set means a lot to me because I worked at the Semperoper, the opera house in Dresden, Germany, for many years. It was behind the Iron Curtain from 1949 to 1990. The songs that we chose in German are all by composers from the former East Germany, and as far as we know, have not yet been performed in the United States. You can stream the concert for 24 hours with a single pass, or watch it as often as you like, along with all of CSI's digital content with the All Access Pass. Either way, I hope we'll see you there tomorrow on CSI Digital. Wir freuen uns auf euch.